to the October meeting of the Board of Regents Committee on Academic and Student Affairs. Meeting is hereby called to order. I will ask the secretary to please call the roll.
Thank you. Regent Bloom?
Present.
Regent James?
Present.
Regent Porth?
Present.
We have a quorum, and I'd also like to recognize our ex officio member, Professor Sasinker.
Welcome to you all. First item is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of September 6th for the committee. I just want to make a note that I will bring, there were several items in the report, in the minutes from the September meeting that requested follow-up reports, including Regent Porth had asked for a report on dual enrollment from Connecticut State, the blueprint for success from Southern, and some numbers in the program in exercise and sports science. So when we get to those campuses, I will hope that the provost will have the follow-up information that was requested at the last meeting. In any event, motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Second. Any comments, questions about the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of the approval of the minutes of the meeting of September 6th?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Minutes of the meeting of September 6th are approved. The first item is for the system, the CSCU Student Enrollment and Completions Report, which is on page 5 of the package. As I think everybody will remember, this is a project that Regent McCarthy and I had started some months ago to have a report that would be available to the regents and others in a summary report about enrollments and completions in the system. We have the current iteration of the report is on page 5 and 6 of the package. If Dr. Blanchard and Dr. Stevens want to talk about the report and its current state, that would be appreciated.
Can do. Thank you, Mr. Regent Bloom. Good afternoon, everyone. So in your packet, you'll see, starting on page 5, a report that's been populated with data. The report was called for back in the spring. We provided a template at the last ASA meeting. There was some discussion about that template. We had some feedback that we incorporated into the template, as well as framing it in a way that's consistent with the new strategic framework of the board. That means the access, the completions, and the talent components of the report. But you can see what we've done is essentially take what you have seen before by way of an enrollment report, showing head counts and FTEs for undergraduates and graduates. We've also included head counts for certificate participants. You can see those both for the CET State, Charter Oak, and for the universities. And then they're aggregated on the right-hand side. Next, on that first page, you'll see access really points to demographics that we might be interested in. First-year, first-time students, what used to be called freshmen, first-generation students, by ethnicity, and by Pell and PACT status. The FAFSA completion, we thought, was also a good metric because to the extent that it's slow, we'll certainly want to be responsive and try to pick those numbers up. But this is not a good year for FAFSA, so we're just not ready to get those data in. But future reports will incorporate FAFSA completion percentages. If you look at page 6 of this report, you'll see completions. And you'll see completions metrics are both the traditional retention and graduation rate metrics, but we wanted to also include transfer rate metrics, since one of our strategic initiatives is to improve the transferability of our community college students to our universities. So we'll want to track that. And you'll see how we have transfer out for the community colleges and transfer in for the universities, which is a process that hadn't been matured yet, and we will build that process through our IR relationships. But we also have completions. These completions are shown by CIP, and you can see for each of the described fields, the numbers in parentheses are the CIP, the 2-digit CIP codes. And you can see how they are for each campus and institution. And finally, on this report, you'll find at the bottom of page 6, the talent section. Now, the talent section is meant to be measuring employment. The employment data that we have from P21, an organization that CSCU founded and eventually transferred over to OPM. But that data will show the kids that graduate from our institutions. It'll say that they're employed. It'll say what percentage of them are employed and the counts that are employed here in the state, but it'll show the degree program that they graduated in. So it's not the data I think that you're looking for, which is how many of our graduates are employed in a given field, whether business, healthcare, or other field. The problem is we have to link the CIPs, the program codes, to the industry or occupational codes. The industry code you may have heard of as a NAICS code. Occupational codes come from departments of labor. We just don't have that connection yet, but we expect to have it very soon once the federal government begins to develop the gainful employment guidance that shows how they think programs are connected to industries and occupations. Now, I've done this before, so we can use, we can develop our own crosswalk, but we'd like to wait for the federal government to develop its, because I think it's going to become the standard across higher ed industry in the United States. But so far, we are showing you the percentage of our graduates that go into a given field. Well, I'll take that back. The percentage of our graduates that are employed, and then it shows you where they're, what degree they got, what field they got their certificate or bachelor's degree in, or associate's degree. So, and then the last page just shows a few clarifying notes for the data. Again, where there are blank data, that just means we're not there yet in terms of the data warehousing capability, but we will move in that direction so we can populate these empty fields. But we want to make sure these are the fields you are looking at, you are looking for. And if you have other suggestions for change, we'll certainly like to hear those, but we feel like the basic design of the report is there. We have most of the data, with the exception of what I just mentioned, the NAICS and the occupational data. But the final thing I want to say, Mr. Chairman, is that I envision this report being provided to this committee 3 times a year. The first time would be after the fall census, which would be sometime in October. It would be even later if we waited for Charter Oaks data, because the Charter Oaks census date is like Halloween or something like that. So that would push it back to October.
I hope it has no connection to Halloween.
Well, let's hope not, right? The second time we would submit this report to you would be after the spring census, which would be late February, to have enough time from the beginning of the semester. And then the final report, which would really provide you with the completions data, the most updated completions data, we would not have that data compiled until about late July or August.
Okay.
So happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Venter. Questions or comments from the regions? Region Board?
I think this is, I really appreciate this report, and I know a lot of work has gone into it. And I also want to say thank you. You've been responsive to the suggestions we made earlier, and that's much appreciated. The one thing I would say at this point is, would it be possible 3 times a year to do some sort of comparison to comparable educational institutions or some other benchmark that we could know represents success in the work we're doing. In other words, for example, I'm fascinated with the numbers on the talent percentages and the CIPs. I'm also, obviously, all of us care a lot about the completion rates and the retention rates, the graduation rates. Is there a way to compare those numbers with some sort of national or comparable benchmarks that could allow us to have a better sense of how we're doing vis-a-vis others? Thanks, Chair.
Yes, we can use the IPEDS data, which is the data the federal government collects, to compare ourselves to any set of peers we define. Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense to compare ourselves to other systems with however many institutions they have. It's likely to be more relevant to compare Eastern to a set of peers, Western to its own set of peers, Southern, Central, CT State, et cetera. So I can certainly work with the institutions to find the peers that they think are best to be compared to. I tend to use the Carnegie classifications to develop peer sets. So for the universities, our universities are classified as master's universities in the Carnegie classification. And they have small, medium, and large programs. I can compare all 4 to all master's universities, or I can compare our smaller universities, Eastern and Western, to the small and medium master's universities nationwide, and compare Southern and Central to the larger programs nationwide. CT State is quite unique. I think, I don't think we'll find another community college system. I'll defer to President Maduco, but I think you're not going to find another community college system like what we have here in Connecticut. So I would probably simply compare CT State to all community college, all 2-year programs. But I would defer to the CT State president and provost on that, and I can certainly work with them on that.
I appreciate that, and I don't feel qualified to give any guidance on the right types of comparisons to make, but I respect our academic leaders' opinion on the best way for us as regions to mark our progress in this. I would say one other thing. In comparing the CIP, the talent percentages in the different categories of studies, it'd be good, is there a way to figure out how it aligns or doesn't with the state's workforce needs in the major industries? Because that'll obviously vary from state to state and from institution to institution. Is there a way to tie that information into where the greatest need is in our own employers in this state?
So we do not have or have access to comparable information from P20WIN. That is a state-based system. I won't have access to other state-based data like P20. There are groups out there like that, and we might be able to reach out to them. But there is a website that the U.S. Census provides called the PSEO. It's the Post-Secondary Educational Outcomes data. And it shows from what field students come in from and what occupations they find themselves in. And it shows that for all institutions around the nation. So that would allow us to compare ourselves to other comparable institutions. However, those data are quite old, so that we wouldn't be able to compare last year's graduates, for example. There'd be something close to a 4 or 5 year time lag until that particular initiative becomes more mature and they're able to put more up-to-date data on their website. But it would be a little old, I think, to make any
Yeah.
good use out of it.
Ira, one more quick comment. Again, I would respect the recommendation of our academic leaders on the way to how to do this comparison. But I do think it'd be really helpful to us as regents to understand how our graduates match up against the state's employment needs.
Let me work with the campus leaders and their institutional research teams to figure out the best way to meet your request on comparability with peers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent James.
Thank you. I believe this kind of a report is just so foundational in terms of a discussion, particularly when we have so many institutions. So, you know, from the naked eye, some of the numbers look, you know, extremely low. We don't have a good context, I think, for, and I think Regent Porth's questions will help us get a little more context in terms of how we compare with others. What I'd really am interested in is, as you look at this data, how are you evaluating where you'd like to focus your attention? I'm very interested, as part of a longer discussion and an ongoing discussion, of what you would like to see, what you think the retention rate should be, and where we can place the most emphasis. Because I think one of the challenges we have is, if we try to do everything at the same time, the progress is so incremental, it's difficult to show progress. So I'd be interested in hearing from, as a system, based on this, where would we want to concentrate our efforts, and over what period of time? And I don't think it's a 3 times a year thing. I think it's maybe an annual or biannual. You know, you help us frame the right time frame in terms of how we would measure progress, and whether or not we're meeting those expectations over time. So I think this is really a great foundation in terms of having this information. And now I'm interested in hearing your thoughts and your strategies based on this. Where do we want to focus our attention? What do we think is, what strategies will we use? And how do we know whether our efforts are meaningful in terms of accomplishing what we want to accomplish? And I'll use as one example, President Maduko's report spoke, I think, pretty much at length about the success of early college in terms of improving, or the positive impact on enrollment. And that kind of indicator for me is very meaningful, as far as saying, well, gee, we rank really very low in terms of early college, and that's an area where we have a huge gap, so there's an opportunity. So again, your interpretation, thoughts and ideas about which of these indicators do you feel that we need to work on most intensely, you know, both for the individual institutions as well as the system as a whole?
Thank you, Regent James. I think that, and this is just my opinion as the CFO, I want to be careful to wade into my academic colleagues' space, but I've been an academic myself in a previous life, so I can maybe speak dangerously, but I'll defer to some of my academic colleagues on this call to chime in. The enrollment, I think, is clearly the most important. We have enrollment challenges. Our demographer in his report portend declines across the board. So I think enrollment is certainly the most fundamental aspect in this report to focus on. Now, the previous enrollment report showed year-over-year changes, even, you know, comparing it to 3 years back, 5 years back. We may want to reincorporate that into this. I think, I know he's not here, and we don't want to speak ill of Jim McCarthy, but that was one thing I thought he offered that was useful, the year-over-year metrics into this report. So I'll try to incorporate that. I think the access metrics tell us who our students are. And as long as we have year-over-year metrics, we can see whether we're serving more or fewer Pell eligible students or other students that we feel are our core business or core customers, the first generation students. All of that is important. We'll want to track whether that's going up or down. I think the retention and the graduation rates, however, are tricky, particularly for the community colleges, because they serve a very diverse population. And I don't just mean ethnically, but mission-based diversity. Some just, they're there for a degree. Some are there for, they're just dabbling, Some are there for non-credit program. So I think we want to make sure we get the metrics right on the retention rate and the graduation rate so that what we're reading is meaningful. And I'll ask President Maduko to chime in on this particular point, or Provost Heineck. But I'm not quite sure what the denominator is in these metrics. And I think sometimes when you measure retention and graduation rate for community colleges, you have to adjust the population you're talking about. Anyone from CT State want to chime in on that point before I finish?
Yeah, I'll tag.
President Maduko.
Yes, thank you, Regent Bloom. I'll tag team with our provost, Dr. Heineck. For starters, iPads. So the iPads, the federal set of metrics that are used to kind of assess higher education. Per its definition, it only accounts for 9% of CT State students. Right? So that metric alone is flawed in terms of it's not inclusive of who we serve. I think too, to echo Dr. Blanchard's sentiments, we have a diversified mission, right? We have students who are not degree seeking, but we serve. When it comes to academic transfer to universities, you don't need a degree to transfer to a four-year institution, though preferred. You just have to be core complete in many instances across the country. And then lastly, when it comes to the earlier comment regarding year over year, I think that's really important. I think so often as an entire system, it's weaponized towards us in terms of where we were a decade ago. Even though as a sector in higher education, we are all down from a decade ago. So I think year over year demonstrates real-time progress in terms of, are we making better inroads in terms of how we're being assessed? Provost Heineck?
I also think for a community college sector that 70% of our students are part-time, we really need to be looking at the metrics around voluntary framework of accountability. That's where our college is going towards because it's a better metric. We look 6 years out for our population just based on the timing that they're spending in our programs, knowing that such a high percentage are working while going to school. So I would encourage us at the community college sector to be looking specifically at our VFA paperwork.
Thank you both for that.
How do you account for the impact of COVID on all of this?
Yeah. COVID was significant, and we're doing our best to help educate all stakeholders. The state of Arizona took the largest hit in terms of enrollment declines related to COVID for community colleges. Connecticut was second in the country, right? So we were decimated. And we had academic years during COVID where we lost 20,000 individuals in an academic year, right? So even trying to make up for who we lost, I think is significant. I think too, what we're seeing in the K-12 sector is significant learning loss across the country.
Yeah.
Right. And we know that there were pressures, let's just call it what it is, to graduate and advance students in K-12 due to the pandemic and holding people harmless. I think we're seeing some harm in that approach in terms of simply they didn't gain some of the competencies needed to be successful and have a sure footing in post-secondary sectors. And I think we as a community college, we are open enrollment. We don't turn people away. Our faculty, our staff, we're seeing that significantly in terms of some of the deficits in learning and competencies from our students, that we're not blaming them, but we have to factor in what the pandemic has done to our entire sector.
Mhm.
I
I
mean, this
think
is,
that, um,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Regent James.
no, what I was going to say is, I think this is the type of discussion to help us understand, when you look at a table of metrics, there's so many, but for you to help us understand what are the key performance indicators for your student population and how we are improving on that, I think is really what we're trying to get to, and understanding what the barriers are. So I'll give one example from prior experience. We would have a very high acceptance rate and a very low retention rate between first year and second year, but a higher retention rate between second year and third year and third year and fourth year. I'm talking about a 4-year institution. And the cause of that very, very significant drop off between first year and second year, a lot of it had to do with financial aid, because so many students may enter an institution based on a portfolio and a financial aid package. And then many of those, whether it's scholarships or awards or whatever, were disappearing between year 1 and year 2. So what I guess I'm trying to get at is, we know we want to improve the system by providing a quality education to more students and making sure that they're getting the credentials and the skills that they need to be successful. So as we go through this process together, I am very much interested in learning more from you on where you want to focus your attention and why, and how we will know that we're making progress, and more importantly, who we need to help engage and partner with in terms of where those areas are. So in the prior institution that I'm talking about, we engaged with the philanthropic community to encourage them to design their scholarship programs in such a way that they were multi-year scholarship programs and not just first year. So that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. It's, what are we identifying as our greatest challenges? And then how do we collectively put the right resources to addressing some of the areas where we think we can make those improvements?
If I may, Regent James, I think you're exactly right, and I appreciate your comments. One of the things we're trying to do from a system office standpoint, the Decision Support and Institutional Research Office here in the system office reports to me. I'm thinking more about developing short briefs on various topics, like retention rate, comparing the retention rate of our community college with others, or persistence rates, looking at the behaviors of persistence by different groups. And those groups can be defined in any different way, but they also can be defined by how much financial aid they received, so that we can see if financial aid is truly impacting these first to second year retentions. And we can design our programs to remediate that. But we want to be able to provide, we provide the data to everybody. Every one of our institutions has an institutional research office that provides more local support with regard to their data. What I want to do is not do the same thing, but do different, which is be more analytic, write some papers, do some small, short policy briefs that will, be 2 to 3 or 4 pages long, that would help the regents study some interesting parts of our challenges. And there are numerous challenges in higher ed, and they will be different campus by campus, institution by institution. So having one institution or another institution speak to how a given challenge affects them, we'll see how they affect one institution versus another. And initiatives might be more institutional specific. But I agree with you, Regent James. We can certainly do more to, shall I say, provide color, provide more context to the data.
And I think the other thing too is, we always talk about the challenges, But we've also had some tremendous success in certain areas with some types of, whether it's programs or wraparound services. How do we, across the system, build on those learnings and replicate those successes as opposed to each individual institution's, how much are we leveraging the collective knowledge and progress and programmatic successes that we've had, versus maybe working in silos and each trying to come up with a whole independent set of solutions. So this is where, this is not a 1 year or 3 month. This is how do we move toward that understanding, experimentation, success, replicating that success, learning from it so that we can move the entire system forward as well as the individual campuses. So again, this is a philosophical discussion here, but it's also where I feel that as Regents, this is where we should be supporting. Do we have enough information to evaluate whether we're applying the right resources to the right things? Are we doing the right things? And when we are, how do we replicate that and move it forward?
Well, I think it's a great philosophical conversation. I think it's one we should have more often, outside of our sort of compliance duties to report to the board. I can imagine, for example, an annual success conference where we bring all of our institutions together and we run it like an academic conference where the focus is on learning. And we show new things that we're doing at Eastern, at Western, at Central, wherever, at CT State, at Manchester. We can show other campuses what a given campus is doing and share that information just like we're all familiar with in our academic lives, right, in academic conferences. I think that, and this will be my final thought, we do a fair amount of that through our functional relationships. The provosts come together, the CFOs come together, the IR professionals come together, et cetera. We can do more of that, and we can do more of that crossing functions. But I think an annual conference focused on the best things that we're doing, I think would be a great idea, and we could learn a lot from them.
Would we be served by to carry that out, a system-wide task force on student retention and academic performance, separate from, that would have a number of stakeholders as members?
I would defer to the provost on that question, Regent Bloom. I believe Provost Hegedus might have an answer.
Yep.
Yeah, just to comment, I think one of the challenges we face is the looking at retention rates as a metric in the aggregate can be a little misleading. And when we disaggregate, whether it's by a certain area or program, that often is more mission aligned, or strategically, what's in our strategic plan? What are we focusing on in certain groups? And it's when you disaggregate that you really get into a plan that will then give you one overall number for the institution. So some of those will be similar in our institutions. Some of those will be different, just because of the nature of our the students we serve and the programs we have. And the other challenge is then we have individual regional accreditations with NetSheet. We have different professional associations. Within those, we often use KPIs as well, but we choose which KPIs to use because we have different areas of strength or different areas to focus on. Again, some overlap. So I think we'll need to sift through what those overlaps are, where we can share and learn from each other.
Thank you. I think we have some interesting ideas that have come out of this conversation. Is there any further comment? Is there any further comment that in the way we want to modify this report add to this report, request additional report, and a different kind of report in addition?
I read Rick Porth. I think, the proposal for how frequently we receive these reports that Lloyd made makes good sense to me. It does feel like we need a little bit more discussion on these subsequent issues that we've had, this discussion we've had in this meeting. And I don't want to overdo it, but I think another sort of meeting to think together about the answers to these questions that we've raised would be useful sooner rather than later.
We could have a special meeting for thinking, which I think might be very helpful. I think that's this would be the only topics we would focus on.
So if there are no other comments by regents, what I've heard, Chair Bloom, is we'll think about incorporating a peers component so that we can compare ourselves to others around the nation. We want to work more closely with CT State on the metrics associated with retention and graduation. And it may be that we follow the voluntary framework for accountability that Provost Hynek suggested, which I think is a good idea, and incorporate year-over-year metrics so that we could see some dynamism in the data.
Maybe we should, to avoid weaponizing this, maybe we should start the year over year, not with 2009, not with pre-COVID, but with a 2021, 2022, a year in which we would be in our current situation that we have come into post-COVID, so that we can see the recent progress in this period. I mean, my own experience is very much that COVID changed enormous number of things. Particularly what happens in the classroom because of the impact that remote instruction for whatever period of time, year and a half, 2 years, whatever period of time it was present, had on the students. And I think if we build from the recovery year forward, I think we might have a better picture of the progress we're making.
We can do that.
I know, Chair Bloom, you asked if the regents had any more questions. I was just wondering if our provosts or presidents have any further comments. Sometimes, we as regents ask questions and ask for information, and your response might be, yeah, you know what, I'd like to know that myself because it would be helpful. Or your response might be, okay, here we go, we got to do some more data collection, and it's actually not going to make a difference. So I hope we can just get to a point where we can talk about these things in a way that are enlightening for us in terms of achieving our goals of improving student success and understanding how we can collectively bring more thought leadership, more resources, just more analytical thinking and discipline to the table, so that we get that we can all come away from this years from now and saying we set a goal and we're really making progress. We're really achieving our high level goals of what we're trying to accomplish as an institution.
I think one of the things that has been missing in the system until very recently is a strong role by the Provost Council and by the presidents as a group. I mean, the presidents as a group and the provost as a group as to what they think needs to happen here. Because I think this is the group that sees what's closest to what's happening on the ground. And the provost as a group, I would hope, might have some points of view about, and to follow up what Regent James and that'd be very helpful, I think, for our committee to hear what the provost as a group have to say and what the president says. And if they think we're going off track, tell us. But we have to have some systematic way of doing this, and I think it's important to have the voices of the provost as a group and the voice of the president as a group.
I think Provost Ferreira has his hand up to respond.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think one of the areas, in Regent James, to your question, is in a way kind of, maybe we start from the Board of Regents goals that I believe are being finalized, the goals there, where then, to Provost Hedges' point about each institution then creating those KPIs surrounding those goals. So while there's still an overarching goal, but the KPIs are kind of at the institutional level, I think that's a good place to start. As opposed to, I don't think I'm really equipped at this period of time to talk about for the enrollment report to see if there's any added data. I think I would just love to start with that Board of Regents goals and those KPIs and see if that's a good area to start, or do we need any type of expansion from there?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I can't find the raise hand feature.
Raise your hand. We understand.
That's it.
Yeah.
Another problem with retention, we just mentioned post-pandemic. I mean, we're still in it, and that the students who finished high school in 2020, then some of them graduated this year in 4 years.
Yeah.
Right. One of them was my son. Most of them are carrying on. If we look at the 6-year graduation rates. And so when you look at retention vis-a-vis student mental health and what keeps them in and out, it gets very noisy. And I don't think we're in a good place in time. You mentioned Regent about 21, 22. It feels like we need to start even further out. President Maduka brought up the point as well that we're in still fragile times in terms of what it means to go into higher ed, what it means to stay in higher ed, what it costs to stay in higher ed. And I think the retention rate analysis today is very different than it was, say, 10 years ago. We have to be really careful, I think, is what I'm saying, in looking at that as a true performance indicator. We need to look at it, we need to unpack it, we need to disaggregate it. But it's questionable of the reliability at this point in time, is the point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
We're going to be in this for quite a while, though. I mean, because, we basically, in education at every level was affected by the pandemic. So, if you hear the same complaints in some ways from some of the high school people, that students coming into high school are not, and we're not as prepared because of so, I mean, this is going to be a problem that's going to be with us for a while. Any other comments?
This is Tamara. The only thing that I would add is a lot of schools are not comparing retention data before 2023 because of COVID. So I think moving forward, comparative data with retention is ideal, but anything before that, because of the pandemic, we are not going to get as accurate of retention data. And a lot of national articles are talking about waiting till post 2023 data to start comparative or retention data, because students are just now getting back into quote unquote the swing of college and really getting their legs underneath them. So I think we need to probably start going from 23 on and not going back to prior to that when we're looking at comparative data. So moving forward from that will probably give us a better picture with this cohort of students. And I think we have to also look at retention data that is specialized by groups. So identifying student groups on our campuses that are historically marginalized, student groups that have been challenged on our campuses, identifying how we are really serving our students with FAFSA and education around the FAFSA that they're filling out or not filling out, that in turn impacts how they're going to school. So I think all of these points lead to student success and retention, but there's a lot of mitigating circumstances around those retention measures, and we can't say one is correlated to the other. So we're going to have to be really careful on how we look at that data. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've had a very informative and helpful conversation. I want to thank everyone. We will pick up with this, obviously, again. If I may, I want to move to the next item on the agenda. The update on the reinstatement of Connecticut State Student Services. Dr. Meduco.
Hey, Regent Bloom, Regent James, Regent Port, esteemed colleagues. John Meduco, CT State President, happy to be here. I'm joined by our Provost, Dr. Karen Hynek, and our Vice President of Finance and Administration, Ms. Carrie Kelly, for us to kind of jointly kind of unpack and go through this slide deck that we prepared for you to kind of just share with you our progress with the resolution per the board to restore student-facing services. Next slide. And can everyone see the slide from your perspective?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So as you know, we are the largest community college in New England, the Northeast, through the Mid-Atlantic states. Last academic year, we served nearly 65,000 students. And so often people refer to the 12, like our 12 campuses. We actually have 23 locations, right? So we're committed to ensuring that we are assessing where our students are across our main campuses and our satellite locations. We serve 25% of all undergraduate students in the state of Connecticut. We serve 5,000 plus high school students who are duly enrolled in high school and CT State. As you know, we are a majority institution where nearly 60% of our students are students of color. Next slide. So from a credit perspective, so those students that are in degree-seeking programs, both at the certificate and the associate degree level, we serve north of 40,000 students. Nearly 39,000 students are part-time. So to Provost Hynek's earlier comment that 70% of our students are part-time. 27,000 students are first-generation college students. That's about 2/3 of all students at CT State are first-gen. 30,000 of our students are working while going to school. 6,300 are student parents. 11,000 of our students are Hispanic. And more than 15,000 students are taking classes at more than one CT State campus. Next slide. So per the specifics of the resolution that was issued back during the special BOR meeting of August, we recognize that there are 7 categories of student-facing services that is the emphasis and focus. So everything from library hours to tutoring services to disability services, academic advising and counseling, mental health and wellness, wraparound supports like the food pantry, transportation, and childcare, and emergency student funding. And we are basing our work, we're basing our analysis on the steps we took during the FY24, FY25 deficit mitigation plan that was approved back on November 15th of 2023. Next slide. So our plan will consist of the following. We will ensure that it aligns with our current strategic priorities and goals. We want to be data informed, so we're going to leverage our holistic student support survey. So at the beginning of each academic year, we survey all students, and we survey basically who they are and what they're going through. So what campus, their employment status, how they commute and get to our campuses and locations, whether or not they're relying on childcare, whether or not they are a parent, their access to technology, and whether or not they are part of a special population, veterans, students with disabilities. Additionally, we recognize that no two academic years are the same. So though we are looking at the deficit mitigation plan and what was reduced from last year, we have to accept that the student profile who we serve this year, in many ways is different from last year. So we want to make sure that we are mindful of that. We want to honor our participatory and shared governance, principles and commitments. So we have a college senate that's at the state level. We have local campus-based governance bodies. We want to respect that. We'll provide a timeline. We'll identify a funding source because that was a point of focus back during that BOR meeting in August. And we want to make sure that every facet of this process is transparent. Next slide. And actually, I want to stop right here. So Provost Hynek, can you speak to the analysis that you and your team have been conducting since the adoption of the resolution?
Sure. President Duco, the analysis that we're looking at is our staffing in relation to wraparound services. We're looking at students as far as their needs with disability services, the staffing levels specific to GPA advisors. We're looking at food pantries, and we're looking at embedded tutors in particular, because we know that that's a best practice. That's helpful. And we're also looking at childcare.
Yeah, thank you. And then Carrie,
Regent James, did you have a question you wanted to raise now?
No, I don't. I'm good.
Thank you. Okay.
And then yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Regent Bloom. And then Carrie, do you mind kind of speaking to just what your division of finance and administration? So Carrie's really leading the charge on behalf of our institution in terms of collecting the analysis. So before I continue, I want you to kind of just speak to how expansive and in-depth this process has been.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. We have received initial recommendations that were formed by the CEO presidents on the 12 campuses. They worked with their local governance bodies to provide us a ranked prioritization of their recommendations for restoration. My team is taking that and we're analyzing it, costing out, cross-referencing it with the deficit mitigation plans of FY24 and 25 to see that it does relate to deficit mitigation. I think sometimes folks want to restore things back to the high water mark of 2004. So sometimes we get things that are a little far afield of that. I think other things we're seeing are other services that are very important for student success, but not specifically related to the enumerated direct student-facing services, right? So we're working through that. Additionally, we're relying on information that was collected through the Provost's office to better understand the hours of operation across our 12 campuses and all of our satellites as well in all of the different student-facing areas. So we're assembling, aggregating, and analyzing all that data as we form our next set of recommendations.
And Carrie, thank you. And then just as of date, where we are. So like Carrie had mentioned, right, we've engaged. We've had our campus leaders, so kudos to our campus CEOs and presidents. They've engaged with their local stakeholders to identify the student needs. We've received the initial recommendations from all of our locations as of September 27th, and we are actively analyzing and costing out all of those recommendations. I will note that I know that budget is always a huge topic for our system and obviously for our sister institutions. So though we've received recommendations that do not align with the spirit of the board resolution to restore student services, we're going to set those requests aside and revisit them at a midpoint of the year. So if there's an opportunity to make a mid-year adjustment in terms of, hey, we're seeing some gains from enrollment, we want to make sure that we're committed to at least considering those recommendations, because we recognize that our campuses all have their own unique needs. We mentioned surveying, and then lastly, on October 25th is our College Senate meeting. So I really want to thank Chair Marty Guay and the entire Regents for really supporting the joint request on behalf of our College Senate President, Professor L. Vandermark, and myself, to give us an extension, right? Because we want to make sure we want to do this properly, we want to do it correctly and not rush it. So we're looking forward to the November special BOR meeting to really kind of fully reveal the recommendations, the plans, the cost, and obviously provide a platform for our regents to ask away in terms of the details of the plan. Next slide. And then this is just an overview of kind of like the components of this process and the plan, but we are committed to transparency. So as of yesterday, if you scan this QR code, if you go to our website, we actually have a website dedicated to the restoration of student services, right? It has appendices that list all the requests from our campuses and locations. It kind of lists the timeline, the components, what's going on, because we have nothing to hide, right? We know that, this resolution was something that our Board of Regents have expected of me in CT State. So we want to make sure that every facet of this process, of our plan, our data and analysis is available for both internal and external stakeholders to review. So at this time, we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Meduco. Questions from the regents? Comments? Regent James?
Yes, I am really pleased with the progress that you're making. I have one question which I probably shouldn't ask, and then I also have a suggestion in terms of future. The question I shouldn't ask that I'm going to ask anyway was, this looks like it was a really thoughtful, system-wide examination of how we use these services, where we need the services, getting to the constituent groups, and we're going to hear recommendations in November based on all of this input. So the question I shouldn't ask is, did the same thought process go into cutting the services? And if not, why not? I know that's a hard question.
Yeah,
Probably
no,
not a fair question.
But I think it's a fair question. So leading up to the special board meeting on November 15, 2023, when the 6 institutions shared their deficit mitigation plans, when we were developing the deficit mitigation plan, we took a similar approach in terms of seeking out input from our campus leaders, from our campuses, sharing information that we've compiled with our college senate in the spirit of shared governance. But the directive that I established throughout that process was that we were going to prioritize certain areas and functions at CT State. So teaching and learning, student support services, I believe public safety, infrastructure, technology, and Carrie, they might be something else. We prioritize 5 areas to say, when going through this process, please be mindful of these areas and do your best not to harm or entirely eliminate these areas. So though it wasn't a perfect process and we recognized there were pain points on the part of our students and the part of our faculty and staff, there was the mindfulness in terms of doing our best to be careful of those very services and offerings that were reduced and we're committed to reduce through the process of the deficit mitigation plan. And Carrie, if there's something else you want to add that I've omitted, but I believe that was the approach and sensitivity we took.
I think that's absolutely right, Dr. Meduco. Similarly, we took a very parallel approach and created a transparency website where we put all that information and documented all of the local shared governance entities that the campuses worked with to build the stakeholder input that formed the basis of the plan.
Thank you. Okay, so now the more constructive, I think, is as we go forward, I think one of the challenged assumptions, not only in our system, but in public higher education as a whole, is that we only have 2 sources of revenue: tuition and state funding. And because both of them are being squeezed right now, we know that we have to rethink that process, because we've got to get the rate of rise of costs more in line with the rate of opportunity for revenue. as we're looking at reinstating these student services, I think this is one area that has tremendous external marketing appeal for people who will broadly support this work. So not for the November meeting, but at some point, I'd love to see us brainstorm what other ways, where can we find resources and support that's outside of the state budget, because it's not coming from there. And we clearly have set a directive that we don't want to increase tuition, which means we've got to find another way to fund the investments that we want to have in these student services. So we should be thinking about who else is interested in this and sees it as a win-win, not only for the higher ed system, but for us, as a society, as a state. So those are the kinds of conversation I'd like to see us have going into the future for the next set of planning cycles. So we're not always, I think we're always feel this pressure, this tension between what we need and what we can afford. And how do we engage partners, whether it's the philanthropic community, the business community, other institutions, individuals who might want to partner with us in investing in some of these, in being able to sustain and maintain the services that we would like to apply to our students. And I'll give you one very, very short example. A long time ago, when Anita Glenecki was the president of Housatonic Community College, so this is years ago, right? 10, 12 years ago. One of the things that she let me know is the challenge of persistence with the students was they were finding out that people would start a class, life would intervene, they'd have to stop the class, and they wouldn't complete the course. Then when they came back, they had to start all over again. And so the investment, the financial investment, time investment just kept cycling around and around. And her thought was, why don't we establish some type of a lab where students can come back and do self-paced, pick up where they left off in order to achieve their goals and complete the courses. So there was this experimental, I think it was a math lab or a reading lab. We were so intrigued by that. This is at the time I was at Pitney Bowes and we had a foundation. We were so intrigued by that we actually committed $50,000 to HCC to see if this innovation would work in terms of helping with retention. I don't know where that all ended up because, she left and I moved on to other things. But those are the ways that we should think about how do we frame the problem in a way that can help others to help us with the solutions.
Well said. Thank you.
Ira, it's Rick. I just want to, I'll say this quickly. First, I really appreciate this last part of our conversation. And I've only begun to understand fairly recently more about how we think about what we charge in terms of tuition and other related costs and what the net cost is to our students. And I thank Lloyd Blanchard for helping me understand that a little bit better. And my understanding is that we compare pretty favorably to many different institutions with regard to the cost of tuition and related costs, but that the net cost is something we need to spend more time on. And I think this is directly related to what Juanita was just talking about. How do we do that for our students so that we can be competitive, not only in terms of the gross cost, but what people actually have to pay? That's number one. Number two, and I think this goes to what President Maduka was talking about. When we think about adding back support services, which I'm 100% in favor of, I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Assuming, and maybe this assumption is not accurate, we can't pay to reinstate everything we cut in the deficit mitigation plan? How do we make decisions about the things we should add back that will have the best impact, the most impact on persistence and completion? I hope that we're, and it's a variation on what Juanita was talking about a few minutes ago too, but I want to say it explicitly. Let's make sure as we put together these recommendations that we're reinvesting in the things that will work best to support students in their persistence and completion. I'll stop. Thanks, Ira.
And maybe to add to that, what types of services can serve more than one campus? I mean, we have obviously opportunities now for some services being delivered remotely that we wouldn't have had 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And again, a part of the package that we're looking at. Any other questions or comments? President Maduco, thank you. You go ahead, President Maduco.
Yeah, Regent Bloom and Regent Porth. We want to be mindful, and that's why our surveying, right? Our surveys are pretty powerful in terms of better understanding who our students are and where they are. I think the availability and the timing of our services is really important. 50% of our students are taking classes between 6 a.m. and noon. And then it drops off to 26% of our students are taking their classes in the afternoon, and then drops down to 24% of all students statewide at CT State are taking their classes in the evening, right? So I think it's really important not just to blindly restore services, but make sure that the services that are being restored are supporting our students where they are. So you mentioned online, but also the evening students. Like I want to pay my bill. I want to be advised in financial aid or what have you. We have to make sure that it is distributed in a way that speaks to who we serve, and that's a complicated mosaic in terms of just where our people are, and we're really doing our best to look through the lens of our satellite locations. Right, we have nearly 10 satellite locations, from Derby to Grasso Tech to Willimantic to even the manufacturing center on WestConn's campus. How are those students doing? How are our employees there doing? So again, we want to be really mindful in terms of the affordability. So our last academic year, 59% of all CT State students paid $0 in tuition and fees. And that's primarily due to the free tuition program, but also the Pell Grant, right? Based on, economic status of our students. So we are extremely affordable. Additionally, Regent Port, you mentioned what are the services that are providing the greatest impact to our students. We have phenomenal guided pathways advisors that do tremendous work. So when you add the free tuition program, those students who receive it, we see a 17% increase in persistence. When you couple the free tuition program with your guided pathways, advising, we see a 28% increase in persistence. And when we're talking about disaggregation in terms of our Black students and Hispanic students, we're seeing nearly a 30% increase in persistence for those students who receive free tuition and the wraparound services, right? So again, we want to make sure that we're doing this the right way, and we really commend our College Senate, who were elected and advocate for their constituents across our campuses to make sure that we're putting forth a plan that really speaks to the students we're serving currently, what we do well, but the things that we're falling short. So again, we really are appreciative of this entire process.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maduco and staff. I think this was very, very helpful, and we look forward to receiving your final report. Nothing's ever final, but your completed report in November. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Very much appreciated.
The next, we're now coming. Well, I don't know if we're now coming to the reports from the individual campuses. I don't know, Dr. Heineck. I think we've said a great deal about CT State. I don't know if you want to add anything in the academic report to what we've already had. You've made a very fine contribution to our understanding of what is happening. So it's much appreciated. Southern, Dr. Irwin. Dr. Irwin with us?
Dr. Irwin was at Atlanta. Oh, there you are. I know you said you were at the
I'm in the
airport.
Atlanta airport, and I suspect it's not going to be a very good thing for the body. There's a lot of noise in the background, so I'm not sure if you want me to still speak or.
I think we can hear you. So do you want to give your report?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
I said, I think we can hear you. So if you're willing to give your report, we'd be happy to receive it. You're not hearing us, is that?
Yeah, I know what the Atlanta airport is like. She probably can't hear
Yeah.
me.
Oh, well, okay. Maybe we'll give you a pass if we can return to you toward the end if things improve at all. I don't know whether they will or not, but thank you. Eastern, Dr. Pauly.
Yes, it's very noisy in my office as well, so I might also need to be excused. No, I just wanted to give you two.
Not that fast, Dr. Pauly, not that fast.
Well, it was worth a try. I wanted to just give the regents just a very quick update on two, I think, very interesting and exciting projects that are underway on at our university this year. These are both grant-supported projects surrounding faculty development in pedagogy. And the first is a relatively modest grant that we received from the National Endowment for the Humanities as a collaboration between Eastern and 4 other universities that are all members of the Council of Public Liberal Arts Colleges. This is a spotlight on humanities and higher education exploration project surrounding humanities curriculum engaging critically with AI. And this is a project in which faculty from these 5 institutions are working to develop curricular modules that help students engage with both the affordances and challenges of AI through a humanities lens specifically. They are working to develop sort of classroom interventions that help students engage with AI and learn to understand it from their standpoint as humanities students. And this will lead to a repository of exercises to be shared across the consortium of universities. It will also culminate in a conference or a workshop where the faculty sort of convene to discuss the things they've learned. We think this is a really great opportunity for students in humanities fields to understand that they are in a very good position to engage with serious questions raised by AI, that this isn't only something for students in STEM fields. And we think that their humanities training actually provides a very valuable sort of standpoint from which to engage with those issues, and one that maybe isn't sort of recognized as widely as it could be. So we want both faculty and students to think about where the humanities stand in a world that's increasingly going to be influenced by AI. The other project is supported by a grant from the Davis Educational Foundation. And we have this year the first of what will be 2 cohorts of teaching scholars. We've identified 6 faculty from a range of disciplines who are really excellent, dedicated teachers. And this is giving them the occasion to sort of take one step back and think very intentionally, developing a new exercise, something they want to explore, a hunch they want to follow up on, to implement in a class. And then to study its effects and its results. These faculty are meeting as a group. They work together to develop projects. Many of them are encountering Human Subjects Research Board for the first time, so that's an interesting sort of support process for a lot of people. And then in the second semester, these faculty will be supported in taking what they've learned from their observations of their new classroom intervention and turning that into a manuscript suitable for publication. We want to help our faculty branch out from their own home disciplines into the scholarship of teaching and learning. We have a number of really talented and dedicated faculty on our campus. And we think that their expertise is something that we can invest in this way. And we think that they will learn things that they can teach other faculty in the broader field. So this is a group that, we're very, very excited to see the ways that these faculty are sort of getting excited about teaching in ways that some of them say, I haven't had this much fun teaching in years. So we think it's going to, we're very, very pleased and very excited to see where this takes us. Thank you.
And will you reveal some of the secrets when you have them worked out?
Well, I believe Regent James said we needed to find new sources of revenue. So I will say for a price, all will be revealed. No, these will be, we trust that our faculty will find homes in journals in the scholarship of teaching and learning. So this should be out there in the world in due course, we hope.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the regents? Dr. Poi, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Central, Dr. Costellas.
Yes, good afternoon. So just a couple updates that I will share. We had passed an updated general education curriculum that is aligned with the curriculum that was passed at the system, and we are working hard on the implementation of that to get ready for everything to launch that in the fall, with all of our programs and leading up to advising and so forth. So there has been many hands behind the scenes following up on that element as well. Regarding AI, I'll share we had a great conference last Friday on campus. And also earlier today, I went down and visited our AI corridor, and we're in the process of installing a synthetic human. So that was at least the case of it was delivered, and I saw some of it. Of the full installation will continue as we're trying to load it up or whatever it is, and they were on campus taking some pictures of things so that they can produce things as well. So we have two being installed on campus, one directly in our corridor, but then also one up in our the gymnasium and rec center as well. So and there will be some flexibility with that one. We are also continuing to celebrate our 175th anniversary with lots and lots of ribbon cuttings and events, and culminating on November 2nd, which is the gala, which is during homecoming weekend. So very busy weekend with alumni events all weekend as well. So lots of things going on and lots of work behind the scenes making everything happen as well.
Thank you. You have an action item, the recommendation to appoint Gabe Rosenberg as the Governor William O'Neill Endowed Chair in Public Policy.
Yes. So not to repeat what you just mentioned, but we are looking for approval of that recommendation to appoint Gabe Rosenberg to the Endowed Chair. And hopefully you saw from his resume, which I think was attached in a link. So hopefully you saw that. He does have his undergraduate degree in political science from the University of Massachusetts and a master's degree in political science from Southern Connecticut State University, and also his law degree from UConn, and is currently working at the Connecticut Secretary of the State and Chief of Staff and General Counsel. And he has a lot of great experience working on various campaigns, and will be a great addition with working with our students as one of the requirements for the endowed chair is that they would teach at least one course a year in the political science department. So this is a great fit. And this was the recommendation of a search committee after a national search process as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions or can expand on anything as well.
What do you anticipate? What subjects do you anticipate him teaching? Or what courses?
In the political science, I don't know that they've identified a specific course yet. I know that there's been some initial conversations with our chair of the department, whether it's an intro class or if it's one of our courses that align with our pre-law pathway.
This is a good year for this to happen. It's it should have a lot. There should be a lot of back and forth in whatever classes, seminars he teaches, I think.
Yes,
Okay.
Agreed.
Any comments about? I'm sorry, questions from the Regents of Dr. Costellos?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Costellos. Very helpful as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion
Wait.
to?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will move approval of the recommendation for Dr. Rosenberg to have the fellowship as written in our resolution. It's a long resolution, but
Is there a
Yeah.
second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Thank you for the reminder. We wouldn't lose that. All those in favor of the motion?
aye.
Right. Opposed? Abstentions? Recommendation is carried.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Irwin apparently has found some connectivity, so maybe we'll try her again if we may.
Thank you for your patience with me. I changed to a different network, so I'm hoping this will go well. Just some quick things to report out. The first is our early college, or what's often called concurrent enrollment headcount, is now at 1703 at Southern. We're recently announcing our Yale Teaching Fellowship, which is a collaboration between Southern, Yale University, New Haven Public Schools, and New Haven Promise. I can give some details if anybody has questions about that. We've been awarded, been invited to the BOR Institute's series of workshops around systematic improvements that the university can make as an emerging HSI, or Hispanic Serving Institution. We recently received a community foundation grant from Greater New Haven Grant for Creative Connections, which is a creative writing program for homeless youth based in our English department. And I am actually traveling back from an NSF EPIC meeting where we just invited my colleagues and I to apply. And EPIC stands for Enabling Partnerships to Increase Innovation Capacity. And this would actually work for the entire system, not just Southern. So I'll stop it there.
Questions or comments? There was a question at the last meeting about the number of students in the sport exercise and sports science program, if you may remember, that was raised last month.
Yeah, so I believe that was 15 students, according to my notes.
Say that. I'm sorry. That how many did you say? I'm having.
She said
Can you hear
15.
me?
50.
50. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Dr. Haggadas, Western.
Thank you, Regent Bloom.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I have just one main update, which is some exciting new news. We mentioned at the start about reinitiating a graduate school that hasn't been in existence for 12 years. So we've had, what I've done is configure the Office of Graduate Admissions, our Office of International Services, and our Career Success Center into one new school. And this week, I have done an internal appointment for an interim dean and an assistant dean. This will, even though these things, these entities have operated individually, we have to prioritize our graduate programs and graduate program growth. It's been pretty stable and hasn't moved much in the past few years, though we have a suite of really great master's and doctoral programs as well. So with that, those synergies, we believe we will certainly increase enrollments. There'll be a lot more opportunities for 4+1 programming. Internship and co-op programs will be able to be integrated, since everyone will be working within that team structure, as well as workforce development, offering more micro-credentials. We actually in the process, in partnership with Charter Oak, with Provost Rera, to be offering our first micro-credential in a couple of months' time. So that's the new news there, and things will get underway in the next couple of weeks. So I expect more from us in terms of new programs or reconfigured programs or new concentrations within our master's and doctoral degree programs. So it is a strategic priority for us here at Westcon. We believe that it will help ensure some enrollment stability for our institution in the future. And many of our existing programs, just over 20 programs, are online hybrid in the main. So that's where we're trying to reach both regionally, locally, and internationally as well. Provost Irwin just reminded me, we're also been part of the Valera Institute as well, and we're proud to be a Hispanic serving institution and build partnerships there as well. And lastly, we too, AI is is everywhere. Tomorrow we're hosting the Society of North American Scholars there. They're offering their third interdisciplinary research conference here in collaboration with our faculty, and it's focusing on the impact of AI in higher ed. We've got a really interesting program. People are attending, and also on ground and also online from various countries. And you had mentioned the Blueprint of Success report, and it's in the minutes. I think you mentioned Southern at the start. It's Western, and I did distribute that to Dr. Diamond and Kayla as well, with the aim of distributing. You'd asked for it at the last meeting following my...
Region 4th had asked for it at the last meeting.
Sorry, yes, Region 4th asked for that. So I sent that. I hope you've received that and the full report. And we are... the steering groups, the working groups within those three main standards have been meeting this week and will meet next week. So there'll be probably more updates at our next ASA meeting, but work is still in progress and ongoing.
Regent Bloom,
that's my update.
It's Rick Porth. In a follow-up to that, I'm glad to hear that plan has been shared with us. I haven't seen it yet, but my understanding subsequent to our previous discussion on this is that at some point there's a scheduled presentation to the full Board of Regents about how we are responding to the NECHI report on Western Connecticut. And I think has to be one of our top priorities, whether it's through this committee or through the full board. And the sooner we can have that discussion, I think the better. Thank you.
I think Pam is online, that is in progress. We're trying to coordinate that. Or Ainsley, something is happening behind the scenes to make that happen.
Agreed. Yes, we're in process. The NECHI report is not final yet, so it won't be at the October meeting. It is not likely to be at the special November meeting, and we'll be coordinating with Chair Gui and Chancellor Cheng to make that happen.
I respect that. I do. This is, again, a very critical issue, and I hope that the Board of Regents will have a chance very soon, sooner, frankly, than November, to learn more about what's being done to respond to the NETCHI report.
And may I add, Regent Forth, that I am happy to report that out at any time. And if you want to come to WestCon, I think President Singh and I will welcome that opportunity in the interim to give you a more detailed update.
But thank you for that. I appreciate that invitation, but I'm talking on behalf,
The full board.
I would like to talk on behalf of the full board.
Yeah,
I think an individual meeting with me isn't enough at this point. We need to talk soon, I would say, about what's being done in regards to the NETCHI report. Thanks.
Agreed.
I'll make an effort to get an update in terms of how quickly we can get that done and when the report from NETCHI will indeed be finished.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. This is clearly a very high priority for the Board of Regents. So, we need to be able to focus on this.
Yeah, just to clarify, the work is ongoing this year. The
Yes.
final report is due in August 25. The site visit will be in October, but the work is obviously ongoing, and that I'm happy to give an overview, not just an overview, a detailed description of the work that is occurring now and what we need to do and the actions, which is in progress.
Yeah, understood. You had a below threshold modification in the art program.
I do, and I'm joined by Dean Vernon. Brian is the Dean of the School of Visual and Performing Arts. Sorry, School of Visual Performing Communication Arts. Name changed recently. And since he's been joined us for an hour and a half, I'm going to ask Brian if he's still around to present the change. If not, I will.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Brian.
Yes.
Okay, I'm having some issues with my camera, but so this goes actually hand in hand with a degree that was approved that came online this year, which is a Bachelor of Fine Arts, right? So that Bachelor of Fine Arts is a very robust program with several concentrations. So this Bachelor of Arts then was reduced from 61 credits in the major down to 49 to make it much more in line with standard liberal arts degrees across the system. And it was also, well, we were nudged in this direction by our accrediting body, National Association of Schools of Art and Design. So that's a summary, but I'm happy to answer more specific questions if you have them.
I have one question, and I think you covered it in the materials, but I just want to confirm it. The 49 credit degree as modified will still be satisfactory for students and teacher educate who are interested in teaching art.
Yes, absolutely. That was actually one of our primary goals, to open up more availability of credits for the education components.
Okay. Any questions from the regents? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hockenhuss, and thank you. Charter Oak, Dr. Ferreira.
Right. Good afternoon. Just a couple brief updates. I know we're at the end of our meeting, that we are busily working on our new program developments. So those will be coming, going through our governance process this month. So I'll apologize in advance. We'll have our little horde of agenda items that go through. We do have some, obviously some modifications as well to some of our current programs. Obviously making sure that we keep our programs up to date, continuously. And also we have some discontinuations as well. So always continuing that academic program plan. One thing, and say for the highlight of Charter Oak, that we were actually named as one of the Forbes America's Top Colleges list. I also want to congratulate Provost Costello over at Central Connecticut State University. They were the other CSCU institution actually on that list. This really showcases schools that produce successful, high-earning, and influential graduates from all economic backgrounds with little or with less student debt. And I'm also very proud to announce that we were the top 100% online institution on this list. We beat out the only other two online institutions that were on that list were University of Florida Online and University of Maryland Global Campus, but we were ranked better than them. So we're very proud of that because it looked at things such as alumni salary, debt, graduation rate. Did you produce American leaders, 30 under 30, 40 under 40, ROI, retention, and academic success. So it shows that, again, core to our mission is that we want to be the premier online workforce college in Connecticut and beyond. And I think this kind of highlights that our students graduate. They graduate with good salaries, little debt, and that kind of highlights it when you look at awards that have those as the criteria. Our scaling committee work is underway, obviously with Regent Yang's leadership, and we're having great conversations there. So obviously more to come soon. And we're really excited about our partnership with CT State and Provost Hynek. We met actually earlier with some of the folks from Northern Virginia Community College and George Mason University. We're going to be visiting them on October 21st and 22nd to really learn more in depth about their advanced program and how students enroll at both Nova and George Mason, and how that can happen between CT State and Charter Oak in our pilot phase, but obviously looking at a template or a system to where this can happen across the entire system. So, and this is through a seamless process. This is not consortium. This is where everything is done on the back end for the student. So that they just literally show up. And as my president says, we would love to have the process be so seamless that a CT State student doesn't even know they're at Charter Oak, and otherwise it was just a new logo on Blackboard. That's how seamless we would like to have it. And so we're really excited to take that trip down together and see how things that we can learn and then start to implement.
Thank you, Dr. Ferreira. Questions of Dr. Ferreira?
Congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah, really, that's great news. Congratulations.
Yeah, it really there's an enormous amount of opportunity here. So this is great. This is great. Is there any other business? This concludes our agenda. I want to ask my colleagues if they have any comments for good and welfare that they want to make at the end of the meeting.
Just the usual thank you for all your preparation and thought that goes into getting ready for these meetings. And it's always a learning and enlightening experience, which I very much appreciate.
Thank you.
I agree.
The most popular motion, which I entertain at the end of each of these meetings, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you. I thank everybody for their participation. This was very helpful, very illuminating. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Live stream is stopped. And record.